Goddess blessings. So I found this list in my journal, and I thought this was a really great thing to talk about. And it's going to call for a lot of vulnerability on my part, but I'm going to attempt that. So the list on one side was the old of me, and on the other side I had written the new of me. And I know I was still in a process of working on a lot of these things, so don't feel like you have to make this when you're complete, because we are never complete. We are always a work in progress, and that is part of the mystery and the beauty. We're not here to be complete in one lifetime. We're here to evolve and not really even learn, but we're here to remember. We're here to remember the intersection of divinity and humanness that we are. And that we are actually God in form, experiencing everything that God can experience. And so no matter what we do, we are still loved, and we are protected, and we are watched over, and we are given 1,000 chances. So when you make this list for yourself, because that's why I'm talking about it, because I'd like to see you do that, write down the things of you, the old of you is that which you are still working on. Maybe it is something you've released, and it's very comforting to then make the notation on the other side about the new of you. But don't feel like it's something that has to be complete. Just write down old is what you need to release, and new is what you need to call in. So let's look at it that way. One of the things that I wrote on my list was hides in addictions, obsessions, escapes. And across from that, I put that the new me would be more vulnerable, would not always be trying to hide in those things, would tell my story, talk about my story, and learn to not only talk, but walk my story so that someone else can be opened up to their own story. In the beginning, I find in a spiritual journey, we do a lot of talking, but then we get to a place where we realize that we need to start doing some walking. There's being and there's doing. There's being and there's action. So I started to learn how to move my addictions and obsessions and escapes away from things that were not healthy into things that were poetry and art and writing and creative outlets. And that's how I started to slowly make that shift. The other thing I wrote is that the old of me was often in a state of agitation, irritability, and feeling off balance. The new of me, I wanted to feel serene and balanced on a more regular basis, and I'm still working on that, but I feel I'm getting there. The old of me was very self-focused in this like pity, poor me, boo-hoo-hoo, and the new of me realized to get over all of that, I needed to be more connected to other people, more connected to my community, and be in a state of giving and service, which is why I started going to the women's shelter and leading a women's circle. And you have to figure out what it is your gift that you're here to give. And then you'll start to see those things like addictions and obsessions and self-pity and worrying and analyzing fall away. When you find your sense of connection to God and centeredness and the way of service that you give out into the world, everything shifts and changes. The other thing I wrote on my list is that I was always trying to save everyone else except myself. And I started to realize that I needed to start focusing on myself, my inner world, my self-awareness, and what needed to be saved within me, because I was no good to anybody else if I did not do my own work. Sometimes we hide in all of that martyrdom, and we're out there always helping people all the time. It has to be coming from a place of self-knowing and self-centeredness. Another thing that I wrote was that I was always second-guessing myself. Is this the right thing? Is this the right choice? I don't know if I should do this. It hasn't worked before, all of that stuff. And when I quieted that ego voice and started going within, following my own intuition and my own inner voice, even though I am an avid reader of religions and spirituality of all kinds, I started to understand that really within me was exactly the answers that I needed. And I just needed to get quiet, ask the questions, and listen. Intuition means going in, and you can't live outside in a human world if you have no sense of bonding to your own intuition. The world will eat you alive. So listen more, be quiet more, be more in a place of solitude with yourself, and allow that to nurture you. I wrote on my list that I was always trying to keep the peace in situations in my life. And I started to learn that I needed to speak my peace, not keep the peace. We need to learn to speak our peace in a peaceful way. Very important to do that. And I wrote that I used to run away from my fears and that I needed to learn to face my fears head on, to basically talk to the monster under the bed, open up the closet, and look it straight in the eye and say, I'm scared, but I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to face this. I'm still going to do what I know is best for me. The fears just dissipate like jello when you do that, like the witch in the the Wizard of Oz. That just melts away when you actually face it and say, I need to do what I know is me. Another thing I wrote is that I overanalyze, and that's a truth I think for many women, where we are always in our heads and thinking. And I started to understand that I really just needed to create space, sacred space, to allow the answers to come to me, not to try to overthink them and overanalyze them and go over and over and over them in my head. Just let it go. When I got to that place, just breathe, tell myself stop, and just let it go and let the answers come in their own due time and space. I also wrote that I was easily hurt and offended by other people, and also worried about what other people thought of me and what I was doing with my life. And the new me rejected that. It rejected other people's projections onto me, because most of the time people are just taking their own stuff and trying to project it onto you. They don't even know they're doing it. It's not even malicious. They just look at things from their point of view. And we need to become so self-aware that we realize that has nothing to do with me, and I'm going to not be offended or hurt, and I am going to continue to do and be who I am. There's nothing worse in this world than not being who you are, and being stuck. Feels safe, but it feels strangulating, absolutely strangulating. And when you allow yourself to be free of all that, you understand the true meaning of the word freedom. What else? I wrote that I did a lot of begging for attention and love, and I started to realize that I needed to release things that were not serving my higher path. If I was putting out more than I was getting back, you know, there's fluctuations in every relationship, but if you are putting out much more than you're getting back, it's time to stand back and take a look at the situation and say, okay, this is not something that's serving my higher good, and it's really not good for the other person either, the way they're treating me, the mode that they're in. It's time for me now to stop looking for them to fulfill things for me and find ways to fulfill life for myself. I found myself being very addicted to certain people and situations, and again, that whole analyzing of things. And I started to realize that my addiction needed to be about me. I needed to be addicted to the woman that I wanted to become. And that's why I named my first book that, Crowned, Becoming the Woman of My Dreams. Who was the woman of my dreams? Was I living her 10% of the time? Did I want to live her 100% of the time or most of the time? Yes, I did. There was a part of me that saw the good in everyone. I tend to have that spiritual being naive. I can't say that word. And I do believe there is a goodness and a light and a beauty in everyone, but you still have to learn to protect your energy. And that was something that I put under the new of me, that I had to learn to protect my energy and to say, this is not something I can be a part of today. I need to stand back from this. Goddess blessings. I hope that you're able to make your own list and think about the old and the new of you, and allow this to be a process that is healing and opening for you. Blessings.